Michael Bodies, channel member, says, Prof, rewatch Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Excellent movie. Just curious, what's Superman's equivalent? An equivalent animated film that captures the essence of Supes. Wonder Woman has a 2009 animated movie. I'm glad you mentioned the 2009 animated movie of Wonder Woman, because you're absolutely right. That movie is epic in every way. I heard this so-called writer once try to say, that's not a very good movie. I'm like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. That movie is epic. And it's 100% iconic Wonder Woman. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But for Superman, I would have to choose Superman versus the Elite, which is the animated adaptation of What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, which is just wonderful. Wonderful book. Wonderful movie. Wonderful comic book as well. That's probably my favorite. If I had to pick one best, Superman animated film ever, it's definitely that. If you haven't seen it, you'd love it. You would really love it. It's good stuff. Yeah, you guys are already ahead of me in the chat. Superman versus the Elite. I get why they changed the title, because What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way? What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way is kind of a long title for a film name. But Superman versus the Elite, I don't know, it's just kind of like, it just seems like a cheap, it's just too easy, for such an epic story. But it's awesome. It's really good. Yeah, I watch it, I try to watch it like once a year or so, or once every 2 years. C.S. Lewis said once that he said, I can't imagine truly loving a book and only reading it once. And that's so true. I think that's true of films too. The films that you truly love, the books that you truly love, you're gonna go back to, every few years at least. So yeah, I'm always going back to reread Dracula or The Christmas Carol or Something Wicked This Way Comes. Superman 78, watching that. Superman versus the Elite, Batman 89. It just, I love a movie or I love a book. I'm going to go back to it quite a bit. And if it's a good book, if it's really or a good movie or whatever, if it's really well done, it's going to merit digging into and getting more things out, peeling back more layers and really studying it. Sometimes I do a critical analysis unit with my students in just sort of like the college comp class that I teach. And, the students aren't going to read. Plus the way a lot of universities do this now, where this kind of college comp writing class really isn't necessarily part of the English department anymore. and there are pros and cons to that. But the idea, the thinking behind it is, well, not all of these students are going to go be English majors. So, in this kind of class, they don't all have to read Shakespeare and analyze a play or a poem or something if they're going to go be, study kinesiology or go, be engineers or whatever. So you can have the freedom to kind of tailor the content a little bit more towards generalized, writing stuff where it's not so literary heavy. Now, I do teach a literature class too, where I really get to go wild with the literature stuff. But anyway, in that class, sometimes I'll use films. And we'll practice critically analyzing film. And, we'll go through and I'll be pulling out all these things about, well, you see this, the way that character's dressed here is clearly this and that. And I'll be making all these connections and pulling this stuff out. And sometimes the students will be like, and they'll see it, they see the connection I'm making. They're like, how did you even get that? Where did you, man, I would never get something like that. I'm like, well, yeah, you'd never get it if you just watched it once and then jumped on to the next thing you're going to watch. If you just, blah, consume. If it's a good piece of art, you think about going to a museum. And I know these students have never set foot in a museum, but if you paid your money to get into an art museum, you wouldn't just walk by just like, oh, seen that painting. Okay, done. No, you're in an art museum. You're going to sit there and stare at the paintings and appreciate the craft and the skill that went into it, and what is the artist trying to say here, and really analyze the composition and so forth. And that's the same thing with film. I mean, there's our books or whatever. You need to watch it and then rewatch it and then think about it and pause it and make a list. Write down connections. Okay, these things seem to jump out at me about this film. Then you just make a list of a bunch of observations, and then you start making connections between them, and pretty soon themes develop, and you just see what's in the movie. It's a great way to do it. Really great way to do it. Yeah, Superman versus the Elite. A lot of love for Superman versus the Elite. Yeah, Nathan Fillion did a great job voicing Steve Trevor in that Wonder Woman movie. Great. I think you guys said Kerry Russell. Yeah, great Great voice cast. It was just a great, and I was so mad that it didn't get a sequel because that was the era where the DC animated films were actually really good. Um, it was before Bruce Timm left, and he was still on a leash, right? DC wasn't just letting him go hog wild and do whatever crap he wanted to do, and he did some great movies. And then he left, and then they did their New 52 BS films, and then they did their Tomorrowverse movies, which pretends to go back to the iconic but doesn't at all, and ends with Crisis, which kills everybody, which is a stupid move. So yeah, that was the era for good movies, and I don't know why. I think I learned one time why they didn't give the Wonder Woman movie a sequel. I think it was because they thought they were going to develop, was it the TV show with Adrian Pilecki, or was it the Snyderverse? I forget. Which is dumb. Why can't you have an animated film, along with that? I don't know. DC, Warner Brothers, they have a long tried and true history of dumbassery when it comes to the DC properties. They have made one horrid decision after horrid decision after horrid decision. I would honestly be embarrassed to work at Warner Brothers in any kind of executive level decision-making job. I don't know how those executives at Warner Brothers can even just show their faces to the public. Even Zaslav, or whatever his name is, the new guy in charge, like, you're not changing anything. You're just business as usual. Yeah, that's one of the professions in the world. It's like working for the mainstream media. It's like, really? That's your contribution to the world? Wonderful.